Hello, I'm Amy Beam, and I really need your help today. Yesterday, I had an epiphany. Stay with me while I explain. I'm going to read the text I've written and post it at the end of this after I finish this video. After being locked down in Iraq for 6 months, I finally was able to board a plane to Germany. The European Union countries ban entry from people coming from Iraq, but Germany had a short list of exceptions, including diplomats, refugees, and humanitarian aid workers. With the help of the German consulate and the Ministry of Interior in Erbil, Kurdistan, I was able to board my plane. In Germany, I visited many Ezidi survivors, documented their stories, and helped with an asylum appeal and other family issues. After 6.5 years advocating full-time for Ezidis and recording their stories of the ongoing genocide, I, too, suffer from post-traumatic stress. Except there is nothing post about it. The genocide is ongoing. For 2021, I decided to focus more on my own life and wind down my human rights work in Iraq. I am tired. I need to recover my life. I decided to focus on the translation and distribution of my book, The Last Yazidi Genocide, into Arabic. More than 6 years is enough of my life to dedicate to the Ezidi cause, I thought. Until I watched a movie last night on Netflix. It is called November 13. That is when I had my epiphany and came to terms with my inescapable future. The movie is a documentary drama about the terrorist attack in Paris on the night of November 13th, 2015. At least 130 people were killed and more than 350 were injured. The international media lit up with sympathy. It was a terrible attack. By the end of the movie, I had tears running down my face. My trauma came back, full force. My tears were for the Ezidis, who are forgotten. All their stories of brutality, death, and rape flooded back. Of course, I was deeply sympathetic for the French victims. I was in Iraq at the time of the attack. I and the Ezidis felt sorry for the French victims and their families, but wondered why the international media would not shine a light on the brutal genocide against the Ezidis. By the end of the movie, I knew my work for Ezidis will never be finished. I cannot walk away from it, knowing that it remains my responsibility to bring this genocide to the attention of the world, knowing that I have the knowledge, contacts with Ezidis, documentation, photos, and videos of the genocide. I have lived in the Ezidi community since 2014, so I believe I know more about the Ezidis and their genocide than any other non-Ezidi. The displaced Ezidis need their story told on Netflix, just like the November 13, 2015 terrorist attack in Paris. They still need asylum. They still need reconstruction of Shangal and livelihood projects. They still need justice in the courts. They still need compensation for their destroyed houses and villages. They are still living in tents. Documenting the Ezidi genocide and telling the world is my life work, whether I want it or not. This work will never be finished. I met Major General Jabbar in his headquarters in Kesik, Shangal, northern Iraq, in March 2020. He had recently been appointed the Iraqi commander of Nineveh West, which stretches from Mosul to Kurdistan to the Syrian border. It includes all of Shangal. General Jabbar was the first Iraqi to graduate from the American War College years ago. He also taught many other generals at the Iraqi War College. He speaks English well. We talked for nearly 3 hours. I told him I was not optimistic about the future of Ezidis in Shangal. General Jabbar told me, "As long as we are here to do this job, Amy, we have to continue to be optimistic. We must believe we can make a difference. We have to help the Ezidis return." I wanted to quit. I was weary. General Jabbar said, "You cannot quit, Amy. I need you in Sinjar. The Ezidis need you." He helped me to get my visa stamped for my 6th year in Iraq. General Jabbar asked me to introduce him to Ezidis. I did, and he met with them many times, and he listened. He continues to work for their recovery and security. So my work to advocate for Ezidi asylum and return to Shangal continues into its 7th year. I continue to support myself on my Social Security monthly retirement, which is challenging. If it were not for free accommodations in Shangal and donations, I would not be able to continue my work for Ezidis. You may think I have thousands of people who donate, but in reality, only about 250 people have donated to my work in 6 years, mostly because I hate to ask for money. I raised $55,000, and nearly all of it went toward getting Iraqi passports for survivors who returned from ISIS, rape, and captivity. Those 250 people who have donated repeatedly. Once again, I ask you for a donation. If you have not donated before, please join my financial support team, and please ask a friend also. The work is not finished. In fact, the situation is deteriorating for Ezidis as the government threatens to close all the camps. Please consider donating $3 per month to me or making a one-time donation to my PayPal account at amybeam@yahoo.com. If 200 of my faithful supporters pledge only $3 a month, I can hire an interpreter, driver, part-time, and use some donations toward publishing my book in Arabic. Below are just a few of the activities I conducted in 2020 and my plans for 2021. Interpreter, driver. My greatest expense in Iraq is a driver and interpreter. That's one person. I always need an interpreter at my side or on my WhatsApp calls. The daily pay is a meager $20 or $25 US. I call it volunteer pay. This always goes to a displaced Ezidi with a family to support. My passport project. In 2020, I continued my project to get Iraqi passports for displaced Ezidis. The waiting period is 3 years, but I am able to make appointments without waiting for those who were captured by ISIS or have missing or murdered family members, also for those whose houses were destroyed, or interpreters with an IOM number to immigrate to the United States. They must go to 6 offices 2 times each. The average cost to get one passport and all the supporting IDs and documents is $100 per person. This is without paying bribes, which some people resort to in Mosul. I have already paid for about 700 Iraqi passports since 2015 in Dahok, but in the last several months, I have been unable to pay the government fee for passports and the taxi fares. I hope to raise money to pay these expenses in 2021. The last Ezidi who worked for me to take people to the passport office died suddenly of a heart attack in 2020. I raised money to give a donation to his widow to buy food for her family for 3 months. I wish it could have been much more. My book translation to Arabic. This year I had my book, The Last Yazidi Genocide, available in English on Amazon, translated into Arabic. It was handwritten and now it is being typed. The typing is almost done and I'm paying for it from a generous donation from Nick Zoa. It will still need a final edit and money to pay the editor. In January, it will be ready to upload to Amazon and sell online. Then I have to register the Arabic version with the Minister of Culture in Baghdad, publish, distribute, and sell it. I would like to print 1,000 or more copies to distribute for free. to foreign and Iraqi government officials, judges, lawyers, NGOs, journalists, universities, libraries, and parliament members. The average printing cost is $5. I will seek an Iraqi publisher. So I am asking for donations for this Arabic printing, which will be my main project in 2021. I have already given at my own expense several hundred copies of the English version of my book to the U.S. State Department, the White House staff for Iraq, Special U.S. Ambassador to Iraq on Religious Minorities, that's Ambassador Brownback, the UN Investigation Team, UNITAD, generals, judges, lawyers, journalists, and Ezidi witnesses who contributed their stories to the book. I have not made any profit on my book. I did not write it to make money. I am also finishing the ebook version to include hundreds of photos. I will then need to make a website for it. The book is also being translated into German. I plan for translations in Kurdish, Italian, French, and Spanish. All this takes time and money. Legal expenses and court cases. In March 2020, I paid $500 to take Ashwaq Haji, her interpreter, her father, and myself to Baghdad. The court heard her case against her ISIS rapist and sentenced him to death. Ashwaq and her family continued to wait for an answer to their asylum application to Australia. I wrote a 50-page case file for Faiza Elias, the Ezidi woman who was wrongly ordered by the court to be the wife of the Ezidi man, Hikmat Bashir, who kidnapped, tortured, and raped her. Faiza exhausted her appeals in court and went into hiding for 2 years. In November of this year, we got the good news that Australia has granted her asylum. I have worked on Faiza's case for 5 years. You may remember the case of the Ezidi woman Basima Darwish and her daughter, who was born in prison in 2015. When ISIS captured Basima in 2014, she was pregnant at the time. ISIS killed her husband and held her for 3 months. When Peshmerga freed her, they wrongly accused her of supporting ISIS. She was tortured by Asayash police in Duhok until she signed a false confession. After 1.5 years of private meetings to get her released, I mounted an Amnesty International campaign. This finally resulted in her release. She was then held for about 7 months in a secret house in Suleimania, Kurdistan. After overhearing conversations to hurt her and hit her with a car, she escaped and remains in hiding. I sent her money and raised money from other donors in 2020. Then I managed in 2020 to get IOM to help her with rent and food subsistence. I continue to work for her asylum, but may have to mount a new Amnesty International campaign. Basima writes to me, "Amy, you are the only one who stood by me. Please don't leave me." Her 3 adult brothers, to their shame, have abandoned her, as has much of the Ezidi community. In Germany, I wrote a 35-page report for an asylum appeal from a man from Tel Banat Shangal. We are still waiting for the judge's ruling. I have other hard cases I work on without publicity. Regarding humanitarian aid, in the winter of 2019 and 2020, I purchased and distributed 1,400 good quality coats to Ezidis living in tents on Mount Shangal and in Sinjar city and some villages. In addition, whenever I visit a family who has requested my help, I take them $25 in fresh vegetables, fruit, and staples. It would be a shame to show up at their tent or house without something in my hand. In the past, I have purchased and distributed computers, SIM cards with credit, mobile phones, clothing, shoes, bicycles, solar lights, chicken to feed an entire camp of 1,500 people, mats and pillows, books and school supplies, stove burners, fuel for generators, and cash assistance. I also paid for several kidney stone surgeries. Advocacy and journalism. I continue to publish reports about Ezidi, Shangal, and Iraq politics, security, and infrastructure. I have 23,000 Facebook friends and followers around the world. I have private meetings with government officials, generals, NGOs, and displaced Ezidis to push for policy changes and recovery of Shangal and people's livelihoods. The number one priority remains locating and returning the more than 2,300 Ezidis who are still missing after having been captured in 2014 by ISIS. I do not write about the meetings I have in private for this purpose. In May and June 2020, I also visited and videoed all of the empty villages on the south side of Mount Shangal. I was the only non-military foreigner with permission to live in Shangal. I shared these on Facebook and wrote many reports on the situation in each village. Every time the first family returned to an empty village, I went to interview them and publish the news. My main expense in traveling to meetings is my driver and interpreter. To go between Shangal and Erbil costs me about $100, which is a tiny fraction of what UN staff spend. I never spend money on hotels. I stay with Ezidi families. I continue to interview survivors and write their stories. The most recent interviews were conducted in Germany from survivors of the Hardin and the Kinne Valley massacres of August 3, 2014. I shared their stories with the UN investigation team, UNITAD. Please donate so I can continue my work for Ezidis in 2021. Go to paypal.com, select Send Money, and donate to the account of amybeam@yahoo.com. You do not need a PayPal account, only a credit card. No amount is too small. If you prefer to make a bank transfer or write a check, please contact me at amybeam@yahoo.com or by private message. I hope that those people who have been supporting my efforts for the last 6 years will be able to donate again. But more than that, I hope that double that amount of people will donate, because if you have not donated for my work for Ezidis, I hope you will begin now. Even $3 a month is very greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening, and have a Merry Christmas, season's greetings. I hope that the Ezidis will have peace, family reunification, and recovery in 2021. Please help me to help them see this result. Thank you.